Welcome to Weekly News Highlights, where we wrap up your week with a glimpse back into what went on in the past week. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. South Korea and Japan are moving on from past issues and took more major steps to strengthen their bilateral ties. Tokyo added Seoul back to its preferred trading list, and the two also reinstated a currency swap agreement. The Yoon administration announced new names for key government posts in its first major shakeup, including a new unification minister and an Olympic weightlifting gold medalist for vice culture minister. This week, South Korea became younger by adopting the global standard age system, meaning they are now a year younger or even 2 years for some people. Japan reinstated South Korea as a preferred trading partner after 4 years of being omitted from the list, and also 2 months after Seoul did the same for Tokyo. Now, this is Japan's latest step toward rebuilding bilateral ties that have been long, rocky. Let's first turn to our Shin-Young.
It's taken about 4 years for the trade dispute between South Korea and Japan to be resolved. According to Seoul's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, the country will be back on Tokyo's whitelist of trading partners for the first time since 2019. On Tuesday, the Japanese Trade Ministry decided to reinstate South Korea as a Group A or whitelist nation, which will take effect starting July 21st, giving Seoul benefits from simplified export procedures. Back in July 2019, Japan placed export restrictions on 3 critical industrial materials used by South Korean companies to manufacture chips and displays following a ruling in South Korea regarding reparations for wartime forced labor victims. It also removed Seoul from its whitelist, triggering a strong backlash. In response, South Korea filed a complaint to the WTO alleging discriminatory actions contrary to the world body's rules. The latest decision comes amid a move to improve bilateral economic relations. Following a summit between South Korea and Japan in March, Tokyo lifted export restrictions, prompting Seoul to respond by dropping its WTO complaint and placing Japan back on its whitelist. After Tokyo's decision on Seoul's trade status, procedural convenience is expected to be enhanced for Japanese companies exporting strategic items to South Korea. Group A countries are also immune from a catch-all regulation, a screening system for exports of parts and materials that could be used for military purposes. Seoul's Trade Ministry welcomed the move, saying that trust between the two countries in export controls has been completely recovered. It also added that it will cooperate with Tokyo on other bilateral and multilateral export control issues. Meanwhile, South Korean companies anticipate a positive impact on supply chain stability, particularly in the chip industry. They also expect the resolution of uncertainty in the economic relationship between Seoul and Tokyo, leading to an expansion of exchanges between the two countries. On the other hand, some expect that restoration to the whitelist will have little or no significant impact on the industry, as the country had already diversified its supply chains in response to Japan's export restrictions. Shin-Young, Arirang News.
The two countries' efforts to soften their relations are also apparent in terms of the economy. Seoul and Tokyo have agreed to secure a currency swap for the first time in 8 years, this time worth $10 billion. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
South Korea and Japan are resuming their currency swap pact after an 8-year pause. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho and his Japanese counterpart Shunichi Suzuki held a bilateral meeting in Tokyo on Thursday to finalize the details. The amount set is $10 billion, relatively small in comparison to the $70 billion in 2011, before relations between the neighbors soured in 2015. However, experts say that this amount isn't set in stone.
It's likely that they will continue to increase the amount as economic cooperation between the two countries continues to strengthen in the future.
This comes amid improving diplomatic relations and with progress in other areas, such as with the restoration of both countries to each other's trade whitelists. Currency swaps between countries are typically agreements where currencies are lent for a certain period in times of emergency or to boost trade. This particular example secures dollar liquidity for South Korea, as Japan is set to provide US dollars. While there is no great need for South Korea to secure dollar liquidity as its foreign reserves rank 9th in the world with a total of $421 billion as of May, this deal holds significance as it strengthens its financial safety net.
It also holds a lot of meaning as it marks a resumption of monetary cooperation between South Korea and Japan after its expiration back in 2015.
With this latest agreement reached between Seoul and Tokyo, watchers expect this to be a starting point for economic cooperation to flourish between not only South Korea and Japan, but also with the United States. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Japan's release of Fukushima wastewater appears to be imminent, with the final check on all related facilities now complete.
Despite concerns from several nations, Japan is pressing ahead with plans to release wastewater stored at the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean, with a start date imminent. The water became contaminated following a meltdown in 2011 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant caused by a massive earthquake. Japan has since then been working on plans to treat and dilute and release the wastewater through an underwater tunnel under the watchful eye of the International Atomic Energy Agency. On Tuesday, the Tokyo Electric Power Company completed a test operation of the roughly 1 kilometer-long underwater tunnel through which the treated wastewater will flow for the next 30 years. And starting Wednesday, the country's Nuclear Regulation Authority will start a 4-day overall inspection of the plant, after which a certificate of examination will be issued, the final green light for the water release. Japan does still need to wait for a final report from the IAEA on the safety of the wastewater, which is expected early next week. But no challenges are expected, as the IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi already stated in April of 2021 that Japan's chosen method is both technically feasible and in line with international practice. The advanced liquid processing system, which is used to treat the water, removes most of the radioactive substances in the water except tritium. The final dilution process at the plant will lower tritium levels to below 1/40th of government standards before the water is released into the ocean. One last hurdle standing in the way of the Japanese government's call to begin the release is local fishing communities that have been staging fierce protests, not only over concerns about safety, but also damage to reputation. 이은진, Arirang News.
As our Yoon just reported, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency is reportedly heading to Japan next Tuesday to deliver a final report on the wastewater. He is expected to come to South Korea too to explain the results of the international body's wastewater examination. President Yoon announced the first major reshuffle of his cabinet this week. 2 new ministerial posts and 13 vice ministers. In fact, an Olympic weightlifting gold medalist Chang Mi-ran has been named the new vice culture minister. Our senior presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon carried out his first major reshuffle of key government officials on Thursday, replacing 15 ministerial and vice ministerial positions, hoping to gain momentum in pushing through his key state policies, spanning inter-Korean relations to energy and labour reform. First, the administration announced its pick for unification minister who will handle inter-Korean affairs as Kim Young-ho, an expert in the field as an academic and an advisor to the government, with current South Korean ambassador to Thailand Moon Sung-hyun as his deputy. Another ministerial level appointment is that of former prosecutor Kim Hong-il, with a legal background of around 40 years as the Commissioner for Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights. Among the 13 vice ministerial positions named, one standout pick is former Olympic weightlifting gold medalist Chang Mi-ran as the new deputy vice culture minister. Also notably, 5 key appointments were incumbent presidential secretaries, including the Secretary for Management Kim Ho-jin as the first vice land and transport minister, with Bae Kwon-guk as the deputy, expected to oversee housing policies. Also crossing over to the government as vice ministers are Park Sung-hoon for Oceans and Fisheries, Im Sang-jun for Environment, and Cho Sung-kyung for Science and ICT. Other postings include current ambassador to Vietnam Oh Young-ju as deputy vice foreign minister, along with other deputies at the Finance, Startup, Labour and Agricultural Ministries, and the head of the National Human Resources Development Institute. Emphasising the word consistency, senior Yoon officials told reporters that the secretaries were assigned to their respective government roles based on their deep understanding of the administration's major policy drives, indicating a clear desire for closer coordination. The cabinet shake-up was also seen by observers as a move to coordinate and prepare for next year's general elections as key officials repositioned themselves to enter the race. Top Office spokesperson Kim Dami says the president asked his new appointees to break down corrupt power relations and interest groups that hinder public interest.
Politics is about resolving current issues people face day to day and preparing for the future. In the process, reinforcing the values of fairness and rule of law as the starting point of justice for the people, that's been the direction of the Yoon administration consistently to this day.
As vice ministers can simply be named, they will take up their new roles from Monday, while the unification minister nominee goes through a separate hearing and confirmation process. Seoul, Arirang News.
Now, some of the 15 names announced today caught more attention than others. Unification Minister nominee Kim Dami is known to be a hardliner when it comes to dealing with North Korea. And former weightlifter Chang Mi-ran was a surprise announcement. Kim Do-yeon with more.
Unification Minister nominee Kim says he wants to lay the foundations for resolving the North Korean nuclear issue and improving inter-Korean relations. The professor of political science at Seoul Women's University is a conservative hardliner on North Korean issues, but was once a leftist during his college days. But in a statement to the media on his potential new office on Thursday, he was very brief, saying all specific questions will be answered during his confirmation hearings.
I will come up with unification measures based on liberal democracy and basic order, and work hard to gain a public consensus.
According to presidential officials, Kim was nominated because he had already served as a presidential secretary for unification in the past and is currently involved with the Unification Ministry as chairman of its Unification Future Planning Committee. In addition, they explained that the decision to put a career diplomat, South Korean ambassador to Thailand Moon Sung-hyun, as his deputy comes as Kim is considered an outsider and the ambassador will help him get used to the ministry. Meanwhile, in a surprise move, an Olympic gold medalist and national icon, former weightlifter Chang Mi-ran, currently a professor at Yongin University, will serve as second vice minister for culture, sports, and tourism. The position oversees the Ministry's sports and public engagement duties and is usually reserved for career civil servants. Chang will be just the third athlete appointed to the post. Following a retirement 10 years ago, she showed her willingness and desire to serve the public.
I will work harder to help athletes fit into our society and make a positive impact on it.
Since then, she's earned degrees in sports administration and taught at a university while also running a foundation for athletes needing financial support. According to an official at the presidential office, while the country's culture exports are doing well, and Culture Minister Park Bo-gyun is a former journalist, naming Chang was a move to boost the sports industry through the appointment of a respected athlete with administrative experience. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
So I've turned 22, but honestly for me, 22 and 24 don't feel as big of a difference. But to be fair, it is a lot easier to calculate my age and tell people inside of Korea and outside of Korea now that I am 22 globally.
저는 1살 어려졌고요. 별로 그렇게 차이를 못 느끼겠어요. 왜냐면 저 나이쯤 되면은 1살 어려지고 그런 거 별로 신경 안 쓰거든요. 그래서 뭐 젊은 친구들은 그런 거 갖고 좋아하던데 저는 별로 잘 모르겠네요.
Right, well, I think it's amazing that we are officially not aging this year. And I have to say I'm truly grateful that the government has decided by law to postpone perhaps my advance into the big 5 by about a year or two.
저는 이제 만 나이가 제도가 시행이 돼서 30살에서 29살로 한 살이 어렸는데요. 이게 실생활에서 잘 적용이 될지는 아직 모르겠지만 한 살이 어려짐으로써 1년이 더 주어진 것 같아서 나쁘지 않은 것 같아요.
어제까진 40대였는데 오늘부터 30대가 됐다고 하니까 몸도 가벼워진 것 같고 뭐 기분도 좋고 뭐 기운도 나는 것 같고 그렇습니다.
제가 원래는 6개월 후에 40살이 됐었거든요. 한국 나이로 따졌을 때. 저는 1년 6개월의 시간을 벌었고 조금 더 약간 젊은 시절을 더 오래 갖고 갈 수 있어서 저는 너무 좋은 것 같습니다.
오늘이 6월 29일인데 32살이거든요. 근데 이게 내일이면 끝나요. 왜냐면 내일이 제 생일이거든요. 그래서 좀 당황스럽기도 하고 근데 이틀 기분 좋아요.
South Korea this week made a big change in the way we count age. South Korea has been the last remaining country with this unique way of counting the age. For more, we have our Kim Jung-sil here in the studio. Welcome back, Jung-sil.
Thanks for having me, Dami. How old have you turned this week?
So I am 2 years younger, which means I am back in my 20s.
Wow, you can enjoy another bit of your 20s. That's great.
Right, but just for 3 months. Still, it feels good to be back in my 20s.
Still. Congratulations.
Sure, but Jung-sil, maybe some of our viewers may not be so familiar with the way that we've been counting our age. So walk us through how it's been so far here in South Korea.
Yes, so the way we count age is when a baby is born, you are already 1 year old because it's widely said that the time you spent in your mother's womb counts as 1 year. And people get 1 year older not on your birthday but on New Year's Day. So in some situations, people could be as much as 2 years older than the global standard age.
Right, because I turned 2 before I was able to walk alone.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
But could you give us an example like that?
Well, yeah, actually I prepared a graphic that we could take a look at while I explain. An extreme example that people often bring up when explaining this system is a baby born on the New Year's Eve. Within 24 hours of being born, the baby becomes 2 years old in South Korea, which many may also consider to be quite absurd given the baby is just a day old.
We've all known how absurd that is, but still we just lived with it, right?
Yeah.
But were there any other countries other than South Korea who followed this standard?
Yes, actually, it was widely used in East Asian countries like Japan and China. Both countries, however, got rid of the system in the mid-20th century and are using global standard age. So South Korea has been the last remaining country to have age differences up to 2 years.
Then why the change, Jung-sil? I mean, what's the government's motivation behind this age change?
Well, that's actually a great question. So first, you need to understand the issues that took place here in the country and also outside. So the South Korean government has made all legal procedures and documents based on global standard age system since the 1960s. On legal and official documents here in the country, you would be how old you are globally, rather than using Korean age. But this has spurred confusion among senior citizens, for example, who one example is when they came and asked for pensions, which in the country you start getting when you turn 65. So they would all go to the city offices 1 or 2 years early and then demand pension and just say that I've turned 65 this year, but my pension hasn't come through. And then the city officials had to explain that we're not using Korean age in that situation. So there was confusion there. Another most common problem took place when South Koreans traveled abroad and communicated with foreigners, for example. South Koreans would say that they are older than they actually are in a foreign country, which could lead to misunderstandings, especially when people are on a borderline of being a minor or an adult. So as a whole, government has decided to remove unnecessary confusion in and outside the country by taking a step closer to the global standard system.
So, like you said, all the legal and administrative documents were following the global age system, even in South Korea, right? Then I'm confused as to what actually has changed.
Well, yes, that's the thing. Nothing much has changed other than when you're telling your age to someone in your daily life. As I've mentioned, all the legal or administrative documentations already use the global standard age. It's just that now that it's become official, it's become much clearer that everything matches people's documentations. On top of that, people feel younger when addressing themselves because Korean age has been used widely in this manner until now.
So Tongshi, I've already told you how happy I am to be back in my 20s, but what are general reactions from people here in South Korea?
Well, as you said, people feel happier because they feel as though they've become younger when they actually haven't. But there were also other various types of reactions. Do take a listen.
I'm planning to study abroad actually, but now I can just tell them my real age without all the confusion. So I like it.
Since the change just took effect, I feel a bit worried and confused as to what to say when someone asks me my age.
And I remember one of the young girls, she was about my age, and she was born a year after me, and she was telling me, she's like, "Oh, I'm older than you," and I was like, "You're not older than me. You're born after me." And she.
Those are some interesting comments.
Right.
But Cassie from Canada said that, like she said, why do people in South Korea care so much about others' age? I mean, why does it so much matter if someone's older or even younger?
Well, yes. Experts said it could be because South Korea is one of the countries that's heavily influenced by Confucianism, and one of the main virtues is to respect those who are older than you, which is why when people meet, they ask about your age to establish the relationship because you don't want to be rude to someone if they're older than you. But the ministry said by making the global age official, the culture of being overly concerned about even 1 or 2 year differences will disappear with time, as children with these age differences will be in the same classroom and be friends as equals without such age hierarchies.
Right, friends are friends, right? And I'm already used to introducing myself as a 29-year-old girl.
You should be.
Yeah, I feel no guilt.
Absolutely. And the ministry also added that this new system will be contributing to creating a society where one's individuality and characteristics more valued than one's age.
All right, Jung-shi, thank you so much for your report today.
Always a pleasure.
We're now all 1 year or even 2 years younger, but still, there will be certain situations where the new age counting system will not be applied. So here are some of the exceptions.
With South Korea adopting a new age counting system, people will only need to remember their international age in most settings, such as law, contracts, and any other official documents, as well as in most administrative and civil matters. These also include eligibility for elections, retirement, pension, and free public transport for senior citizens. However, there are certain cases where the change will not be applied. One exception is elementary school entry. In this case, the so-called year age will be used. This is the age system that considers the year of birth only. For example, currently, children start first grade the following March after they've turned 6 in the international age system. And this happens regardless of which month their birthday is in. The system will continue to be used. If to apply the system to the first graders to be next year, those born in 2017 will enter elementary school in 2024. That's because all those born in 2017 will turn 6 in the international age system this year. The old method will remain in place for mandatory military conscription as well. The new age system is not applied for these cases, as the Ministry of Government Legislation explains, for better management.
It's easier to manage school and military conscriptions on a yearly basis. For example, schools operate on a yearly system. Military conscription can also be effectively managed on a yearly basis.
The same rule will be applied to purchasing alcohol and tobacco. This year, those born in 2004 or earlier, regardless of their birthday, are able to purchase alcohol and tobacco. The eligibility age for public servant examinations won't be affected as well. However, the new system could become a sensitive issue among Koreans, as the Korean language system has honorifics that are used to address older individuals. The Minister of Government Legislation in a briefing on Monday also admitted there has been much concern regarding this problem. To this, he said it could be addressed as time passes by. 신새벽 아리랑 뉴스.
We thank you for watching Weekly News Highlights. Stay safe wherever you are.